Let the hype begin. Alabama, Florida State, and a lot of talking, including one FSU perspective on this Alabama team. Clint's going to help break that down. What's Bama's defensive line rotation going to look like? Is that going to be a strength for this team? Because you're going to have to get pressure on the quarterback, stop the run to win it all. And how about Jalen Hale, having him back, the speedster? We're going to get into all that, plus some big freshmen right here on Cover Crimson. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Philadelphia, Mississippi. The Timeout Sports Lounge, Vegas-style sportsbook, right there at Golden Moon Casino. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 hours and change from Birmingham. And it's right there in your own backyard. They've got 20 big screen TVs, and you can do it all. Bet on Bama to beat Florida State. Maybe you think Florida State's going to beat Bama. Go check it out. And we appreciate them for helping us put the show on every day. All right, guys, let's get this thing started. Let's play the open, and let's talk some football. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie. Again, great to talk to you guys on Cover Crimson here on the YouTube channel. Maybe you guys are listening to us on our podcast network, the Cover Crimson Podcast Network, Apple, Spotify. Make sure that you're downloading if you haven't done that already. All right, the hype's starting to build. Big kickoff, Alabama and Tallahassee to play Florida State. Saban's not there to bail Alabama out.
No, he's not. I wonder how many times that's going to come up before kickoff, because it is a massive, what do you call it? Sound bite. That's the word I'm looking for. But, you know, the reason that we're talking about Florida State now is I just thought it was interesting. One of their fans posted on warchant.com, the On3 website for Florida State, kind of, you know, I'll put it this way. He said, been studying Bama on tape. Here's my take on them by position. So he goes position by position and he lists kind of his thoughts on them. I'm not going to read some of them. I will, because it's just a few sentences. Like the quarterback, I mean, it's really long. Pretty much says that he doesn't feel like the offense is going to look any different with Ty Simpson relative to Jalen Milroe, because Ty Simpson, similar to Jalen Milroe, struggles to make post-snap reads, was good with the pre-snap stuff, was poor with the post-snap, and Ty Simpson is very fast, like Jalen Milroe. So even though they're bringing in Ryan Grubb, it's Kalen DeBoer's offense. So in their mind, Alabama's not going to have a much different-looking offense. I'll go ahead and tell you, no reason to dive much into that. I completely disagree. I don't think Ty Simpson is even close to the same quarterback as Milroe. Yes, he is more mobile than given credit for, but he's not going to be one of the most dynamic players, dynamic runners on the team. Not even close. And I don't think you're going to funnel the run game through the quarterback like you did with Jalen Milroe. And I would say from a pre and post snap read standpoint, I would say Ty Simpson's, you know, quite a bit ahead of Jalen Milroe. So that's I completely disagree with that one. We'll go ahead and move on, though. Running backs, he says big loss for them losing Justice Haynes in the portal. He was their most explosive guy by far. Jam Miller is a serviceable power back. Daniel Hill and Dre Washington are also big power backs. They have power, but I don't see much explosiveness at the position. The freshman, A.K. Deer, may be their most explosive guy. He might play a good deal. So, Mick, do you have any thoughts on that before I address?
Well, I mean, I would love to see A.K. Deer play, but Jam Miller was the guy last year. Justice Haynes, we kept waiting for Justice Haynes to be the guy that, you know, was kind of the featured back, but he just never was, right? So I find that interesting, but I don't agree.
Yeah, I don't either. Now, granted, there's elements of it. Justice Haynes was Alabama's starter for like the first half of last season. Now, pretty even as far as number of snaps relative to Jam Miller. Obviously, Jam would come in and get more action. He was seeing more touches. But Justice Haynes was the guy who was jogging out there for the first snap pretty much every game for like the first 6 or 7. Well, why did they switch that up? If Justice was their most explosive player and their best running back. Why did they give Jam a bigger workload even when Justice was a starter? And then why did they move to Jam Miller being the starter? So don't agree with that. I don't think K. Deere is going to play a ton. I think the running back position, you're going to see a lot of Jam Miller. I've talked a lot about Daniel Hill. Obviously, Richard Young's in that conversation. Dre Washington. He's pretty good between the tackles. I wouldn't describe him as a power back necessarily. I think he's got a little bit more wiggle, a little bit more juice than he's probably given credit for, but he's pretty effective between the tackles. So if that he describes, between the tackle runners who do run, low center of gravity, 5'9", you look at his size, he's definitely that squatty, small running back, 220, 225 pounds. So I can see where maybe you would describe him as a power back, but I think he's a lot more than that. So I just, once again, don't agree there. Let's talk about the defensive backfield. DB may be this team's biggest weakness. They have recruited well, but are very young. True freshmen played a lot last year, and more freshmen will play this year. They were taken advantage of repeatedly by Georgia and Vanderbilt. I don't think they tackle very well either. Losing Saban and Caleb Downs was a big blow to this position group. Mick, you got anything?
Isn't that the strength of the team?
It's definitely the strength of the defense, and I would argue it was probably, if it's not the strength of the team, it would be the second.
Yeah, right.
I don't even know. And this is why I wanted to read this because, and granted, some people just say, dude, there's some dumb takes, move on. But like, this is kind of, I like looking through the lens of another fan base who has claimed to go and has studied Alabama tape and they're coming away with takeaways. When Alabama's playing Florida State in week 1, I kind of am curious to know what Florida State's, how they feel about Alabama more than just, what your surface person would know, someone who actually went and watched the tape. I completely, once again, disagree with this take, though, because let's see. Keon Sabb is a redshirt junior, a fourth-year player. Bray Hubbard is a junior, a third-year player who's got half a season of starting experience. Keon Sabb has got quite a few starts. He's played close to 1,000 snaps in his career. You got Damani Jackson, a multi-year starter, both at USC and at Alabama. He's going to be a senior. Deshaun Jones, who's projected to start at Husky, played a lot, got some starts at Wake Forest, played a lot for Alabama this season, got a couple of starts, if I'm not mistaken, has played quite a bit of snaps, but he's a redshirt senior, a fifth-year player. And then the only true sophomore in the room, in the starting unit is Zabian Brown, but he's got a full year of starting experience. So I wouldn't even describe him. Now, he did bring up how freshmen played a lot last year.
Right.
But it's like, I would say they got a really, now you start working into the depth. Cam Calhoun played quite a bit last year for Utah, got a couple of starts under his belt, has played, I think, 400 snaps in his career, but he's going to be a third-year player. Yes, you've got Dijon Lee, who's probably going to be in the mix at corner. Yes, you've got a guy who's barely played at all. In fact, I don't know if he got any snaps on defense last year, and Drake Kirkpatrick Jr., who's a true sophomore, who's probably going to be backing up Deshaun Jones at Husky. You also got Red Morgan, who played close to 200 snaps this past season, but he's only going to be a true sophomore. You look at Ivan Taylor, he's probably going to be in that rotation at safety. True freshman. You look at Zay Mincy, true sophomore, played over 100 snaps and even got a start. But if you want to call him a little green, I totally get it. But it's like, that's where college football is at. Like, you having a two deep full of multi-year starters and guys who have been around for 3 or 4 years, that's difficult to do. I think based off of where college football is at the top, they've got a lot of experience. They got a lot of upperclassmen, and then a lot of your, that second wave of guys, a lot of talent once again, but also you've got some experience with Red Morgan and Cam Calhoun and Zay Mincy. Like, these guys have seen, and Cam Howard's another one. He has spent a year in Alabama's system, and he got a full year of playing time for Charlotte, including some starts for them. So he's played close to 400 snaps in his career. That's another option at safety. So I think out of everything that they talked about, this was probably the most absurd that I saw. Now, there was a lot that I didn't agree with, but the defensive backfield is going to be one of Alabama's strengths. I would say it's between that and wide receiver. But yeah, Mick, I don't agree with this whatsoever.
I worry about the Alabama stopping the run. That was where they struggled last year. And and sometimes, deviating game plans when they weren't working, making adjustments. Right? Couldn't make an adjustment in the Vanderbilt game, couldn't make an adjustment in the Oklahoma game, didn't make an adjustment in the Michigan game until it was too late. Now, part of that was turnovers. Tennessee could, at the end of the game, couldn't stop the run, so I mean, the secondary to me is a strength. I think it's going to be really good. And we're going to talk about the defensive line coming up. So you're going to kind of address what I would be concerned about. And it doesn't feel like he really kind of hit that.
Do you want to know what he said about Alabama's defensive line?
Tell me before.
Recruited very well here as well. Lots of big, strong guys who can move. Very tough against the run. Struggled to generate a pass rush, though. Their top returning sack guys, a 320-pound defensive tackle who only had 2.5 sacks. They have lots of talent, but pretty much zero proven production at edge rusher. Couldn't generate much of a pass rush in the games I watched. Pass rush could be one of their biggest weaknesses. Now, isn't it funny? Now, granted, I do think there's some truth to this because you were talking about their inability to stop the run. They didn't automatically put that on the defensive line. And I think a lot of that wasn't really on the defensive line. When you look at the individual pieces, they were pretty good up front, tackle to tackle, stopping the run. Tim Keenan was an ox in there. Tim Smith was effective. James Smith was effective stopping the run. So they had some guys. I think it was more of the off tackle or outside the tackle stuff that really got to them. Quarterback runs in some games, obviously some zone reads where they're taking it off tackle. That's where a lot of your, lack of being able to stop the run came into play. Now, there were times in some of these games where, they weren't giving up a ton, but they were giving up enough on the ground where they couldn't kind of get off the field. Offenses were able to kind of close out or drain some clock. So, I'm not saying that it was never on the defensive line. Certainly was at times, but it is funny. I would say there's some truth to this. I would probably say, pass rush could be one of their biggest weaknesses. I don't know how you say that the pass rush could be one of their biggest weaknesses and then say that their secondary could be one of their biggest weaknesses, because it's like, it's probably going to be one or the other.
It sounds like a terrible defense.
It does. It sounds like that's a good point. It sounds like Tommy Castellanos is probably going to have a field day.
Stop him. They're not going to stop.
They're not going to stop. Nick Saban's not there to save him, Mick. No. I don't even know why we're playing. I mean, at this point, just hand him the trophy and let's move on to 2026. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on a few of these, and there's a lot more. I might even I don't know that I'm going to put the link in the description, but
you should do it.
Yeah, I'll do it. It's behind a paywall, so you're going to have to, not hand War Chant some money. You can hand Bama Online some money. And
is that War Chant? Is that what? Yeah. This War Chant?
Yeah, and it is position by position. Someone dove in. Now, this is not their staff. This isn't their staff. This is a poster, a fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. I would be roasting this a lot more if this was one of their. And there's some stuff that's kind of.
Gene used to work with him. Gene.
J Howell 99, and he is a new member. So,
okay. What's the other guy?
This might be an Auburn fan if I'm speaking candidly. And go ahead.
I like this guy. So yeah, Gene.
Oh yeah, they're great. I mean, the War Chant's one of the legendary sites. So, I mean, this is definitely not just because someone also posted on Bama Online one time that there might be a language barrier between Tua Tagovailoa and Alabama. So you can't hold the staff and the website responsible for, the posters sometimes saying dumb things. But I was reading through this and I just thought it was pretty silly. So I at least wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Hey guys, look, this is Ocean City, Maryland right here. Beautiful place, great sunsets, awesome seafood, crabs, crab cakes, fish, all that stuff that you love. And one of the best boardwalks in the country. Secrets Bar, you got it all right there. Residence Inn, back to back. Coastal Style Hotel of the Year. Our friend Keith got you covered over there. Ocean City, Maryland. What an awesome place. I can't wait to get there myself. Our sister show from the next round actually swung out there and did their show there and loved it. Dunaway couldn't believe how big the place was. So we appreciate them for being a part of this. All right, let me get into this defensive line because we just heard from the poster on War Chant's message board that Bama's in big trouble. Obviously, this defense is the defensive line has one guy with a couple sacks, nothing to worry about here. But just for my sake, what does the rotation look like to you? I mean, is he talking about LT Overton? Is that like the only guy that I'd even keep an eye on? Is that who he was talking about? What? No Tim Keenan love there. No.
That, he said they were really good at stopping the run. Just pretty much struggled to generate a pass rush. I mean, and if you're looking at sack totals, and that's the only thing you're looking at, then yeah, I mean, and I agree to an extent, but it's just I think when you look at pressure rate, they were able to generate a pass rush. They just didn't always close, and it was mostly LT Overton. But once again, you had a lot of circumstances that kind of kept the Wolf position, and I'm going to be doing a short clip on this for A to Z, over on that YouTube channel. Going to be 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes max. I'm going to be talking about the Wolf and Bandit rotation, and so we'll be getting into this a little bit more, but I at least want to preview it a little bit. Last year, how many guys do you think played snaps at Wolf last season in meaningful action?
How many guys
at just the Wolf position? I mean, you can expand this to Bandit, but just specifically seeing snaps at Wolf, how many would you guess?
I'm going to guess 4.
6.
Okay.
And so 4 would have been kind of reasonable, but when you think about a lot of what happened, Quandarius Robinson gets injured. Quay Russaw temporarily gets injured. Keanu Coote ends up leaving the team early. You had the injury to Yanze Pierre, which kind of slowed him down, and he was starting to get a little bit of traction at that Wolf position, and then saw his kind of his snaps drop off after that. You had, Jihad Campbell, who was seeing snaps at Wolf, was obviously mainly an off-ball linebacker, but was kicking out there and kind of putting his versatility on display. Next thing you know, Deontay Lawson gets hurt, and he's no longer able to play Wolf. You did have Jamarian Latham make the switch from Bandit to Wolf. So, I would say, Keon Keeley, even though he did get meaningful action at the end of the Iron Bowl, he only played 24 snaps last year, so I don't know that I would put him in this category. But other than Keon Keeley, only 3 Bandits, and that was LT Overton, it was Jordan Renaud, and it was Jamarian Latham, who ended up making the move to Wolf. And then you had 6. And so everybody was wondering, okay, why was Alabama struggling with his pass rush? And it's like, probably because they couldn't get any sort of continuity there, because guys were getting banged up and they were having to try different things and do different things. Hopefully guys being healthy and having a little bit more there as far as guys you can put in and rotate, that should be able to help. But as far as the defensive line rotation, Chase Kleinard on Twitter, he asked, do you think there is a potential breakout candidate in fall camp on the defensive line that is not being discussed much, if at all? Similar to what Tim Keenan did in the fall camp right before the 2023 season. Seemed like he came out of nowhere. And then B. Will on Twitter asked, who will we be seeing in the defensive line rotation this year? So I thought I'd just combine those two and address them both. First of all, Mick, who would you say is the most I know you were a big Damon Payne fan last year. You talked about him a lot. Who would you probably say is your favorite amongst this defensive line group right now? Doesn't have to be the best player, just a personal favorite. It's personal preference.
I think LT Overton. I mean, I think he's the guy that is going to be the most impactful guy. I mean, I think he's going to be the leader. I know Tim Keenan's there too. I'd say kind of maybe those 2 guys.
Yeah, they're definitely the leaders of the group, and I think James Smith is going to be ready to kind of step up. But so as far as the defensive line rotation, and so I'll include Bandit with that. Really, you could probably focus on the interior, but as far as interior guys, and I'll need to go back and look and confirm this, and I'll actually confirm this before I do the video for A to Z Sports. I'll look and see exactly how many guys they pretty consistently had in their interior defensive line rotation last year. But I want to say it was 5, especially when they were kind of at full strength. When you had Jaheim Otis before he left, but even after he left, you ended up seeing Edric Hill a little bit more in some meaningful snaps. You saw Jeremiah Beeman by the ball game, but that's after you had lost Damon Payne, so I really wouldn't count Beeman. So I'll have to go back and actually look. But I think that your defensive line, or Alabama's in particular, if you're talking about just the two interior spots, you're probably at your best when you have 4 to 5 guys getting snaps on the interior. So,
Right.
and I think Alabama's in pretty good shape there. I don't think they can afford a lot of injuries on the defensive line. I think it's very important for their main 4 to be healthy, which obviously is going to be your 2 starters and Tim Keenan and James Smith. It's also going to be Jeremiah Beeman, who I think is going to take a massive step forward. We've heard great things about Edric Hill. I think he's going to be a fantastic situational player. But as far as who ends up being that 5th interior guy, could it be like a Steve Mbumwa? Certainly possible, especially as he gets more comfortable on this level and he gets more of the technical side of things. But just watching him in the spring, he was a lot more raw than I was expecting. So while I think he's a physical marvel, I think he's going to be a phenomenal player in due time, I'm not going to put those expectations on him. So I think once you get past those 4, I think you start talking about situational guys. We've talked about Kelby Collins. Think he's probably going to be mainly a bandit this season after he's dropped 10 pounds, but I do think he gets situational work inside. I do think LT Overton is going to get some situational work inside. Keon Keeley being the biggest bandit, does he start seeing a little bit more action in there? I don't think so. I think he's more of a, Jordan Renault's 265 pounds, like good size, but he's more of a pure edge bandit. You don't want to play him really any further inside than like a 4 eye on the inside shoulder of the tackle. When you start putting him as a 3 tech or a 2 eye on the inside shoulder of the guard, I just don't think he would be able to hold up in there. You maybe could talk about Cavante Henry. I think he's kind of a BC gap player and did some pretty good things on the JUCO level, only being 220 pounds. So maybe him bulking all the way up to 268 pounds, he can hold up in the SEC, despite the fact that I would say you would be a little lean for that as well, considering how effective he was at doing that at 220 pounds on the JUCO level. So that's another one. But I would say Jordan Renaud is kind of a pure edge. I think Keon Keeley's kind of a pure edge. Henry could be, but I think Kelby Collins and LT Overton have the ability to give you some inside snaps. And I think at this point, that's probably where you're going to see, quote unquote, that 5th interior defensive lineman in the rotation. It will kind of be a cross between those 2 guys. So really at that point, it would be 6, but both of them are playing inside and out. I think there's going to be some packages where you're getting multiple bandits on the field together, maybe a couple of wolves together, but you could see, 2 or 3. I mean, obviously you're going to see 2, but maybe 3 on the field between, maybe it's a couple wolves and a bandit, maybe it's a couple bandits and a wolf, but they're going to get creative in how they use these guys because they have a lot of depth. But their defensive line room is, I think it's in good shape. Like, once again, don't think they can afford a lot of injuries, but I think as long as guys stay healthy, this is going to be one of the better defensive line rooms in the country.
You got to develop talent fast for depth because, like you said, it feels like it's a little thin. Guys like Payne leaving. You don't want to look thin. Well, yeah, you do. I think we all want to look thin, but we also want to look good. Crimson 20, that's our rowback.com code as you get ready for football season, the office, going back to school, whatever it is, they got you covered at rowback.com. The dog logo everybody loves, and the very comfortable fitting shirts with great styles. Check them out, and you get 20% off every email address with our code there, Crimson 20. All right, Jalen Hale, he is part of this wide receiver room that is very deep right now, and I feel like that in the secondary, I'd love to just go to practice and watch those 2 sides go at each other all the time with Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, what's Hale's role going to be? So tell us, what's Hale's role going to be?
Yeah, Trudy McCluskey on Twitter, she asked a question, and she just pretty much, it was the same thing you asked. Any insight on Jalen Hill's role this year? And, I think it's interesting because it always isn't perfect. Like, guys will move around, they'll play different positions. When I talk about X, Z, and slot, your X's and your Z's are going to be your outside receivers. Your X is going to be playing on the line of scrimmage a lot, so he's going to be dealing with press coverage more. So he needs to be, bigger and more physical. And then your Z is playing off the line of scrimmage because he's lined up to the side of the tight end a lot of the time. And he's going to be your motion player because he's lined up off the line of scrimmage. You can't go in motion if you're on it. And then your slot's your inside guy. So it's normally like body types and kind of, okay, this guy's a little bit smaller, but he's definitely an outside receiver. So I kind of slot him in as a Z. Maybe you can win downfield. Typically your Z doesn't have to be as good, getting off press coverage and all that stuff. So, a lot of this is just playing around with it, and it's kind of just archetypes type of stuff. But I think when you talk about Alabama's top 3 receivers, I think at this point we all agree it's going to be Ron Williams as the 1, Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton. What order that ends up being, I don't really know. I think Bernard's probably the safer choice at this point, but I think Horton's got more upside. And then, I've talked a lot about Rico Scott, kind of being that number 4 guy. And I do want to admit it is possible that Rico Scott could end up in the starting lineup. It would either be Horton at the X, Ron Williams at the Z, Jeremy Bernard at the H or the slot. It's possible that Ron Williams is the slot and Jeremy's the Z, but it's also possible if Horton's not in the starting lineup. Ron Williams last year, he was listed as the X, and he is, despite the fact that he's undersized, he's really good at getting off press coverage, so he can play that X spot and which is typically viewed as your primary receiver, like your alpha receiver. A lot of times it's quote unquote your X. They're typically the ones to the single receiver side, get them in isolation, let them go to work. So it's possible that if Isaiah Horton isn't in the starting lineup, it would be Ron Williams at the X, either Rico Scott or Jeremy Bernard at the Z, and then the other one starting in the slot. So, a lot of positional flexibility, but past those 4 players, that's where things start to open up a little bit. Lazier Brooks is certainly in that conversation. Jalen Hill is certainly in that conversation. And Cole Adams is probably the other one. A lot of people will say Jalen Mbakwe. I do think he probably gets some situational snaps, but I'm not putting him in that top group as of right now. But Jalen Hill, I personally have Lazier Brooks kind of becoming that number 5 receiver. I'd be shocked with the way that he's trending if he was the wide receiver 6. But Jalen Hill was supposed to be probably a starter last year, former top 50 recruit, very talented in his own right. And despite the fact that he didn't have a ton of size, I think he's a great primary backup at that X position to Isaiah Horton. So he's like 6'1". He's not as big as Horton at all, but he got that ball winning ability downfield. So I would say somewhere between wide receiver 5 and 6, depending on Brooks. And then I think Cole Adams is going to be checking in behind both of those 2 guys. So that's kind of how I currently am viewing the wide receiver room. That could always change. In fact, it probably will. And we'll be willing to hop on here and give you guys any updates in fall camp. But that's kind of how I view it. Jalen Hill probably in that wide receiver 5 or 6. And he's going to see, a little bit of playing time. He's going to get some targets. But with him in this pecking order, I don't know if it's going to be like a massive workload unless an injury happens to, some of the guys ahead of him.
And that kind of leads us into which freshman will have the biggest impact. I mean, you just named a couple right there in your wide receiver room. Is that what you're thinking with biggest impact, or are there some other guys popping up?
So this is how I have it listed right now. Is I have 3 different categories. So this comes from Eli on Twitter, by the way, and he said, "Are there any true freshmen that are taking primarily first team reps, and do you see any true freshmen making big impacts this year?" No true freshmen that I know of are taking like primarily first team reps. Guys are rotating in and getting some, but with everybody healthy and back, Damani Jackson being back, I don't know how much Dijon Lee is really getting first team reps. I'm sure he's getting some, but not enough where you can say primarily. But I would say as far as guys who are going to make an impact in their freshman season, I have 3 categories: guys I'm confident in, guys that I think are very possible, and then more of your long shots. In the confident section, I would have Dijon Lee and Lazier Brooks. Now, when I guess big impact is subjective. I don't know really what that means, but having an impact on Alabama's offense or defense, getting key rotational snaps, making some plays that affect the outcome of games, I think Dijon Lee and Lazier Brooks are both going to be in that conversation. When you start moving to the possible category, I got guys like Ivan Taylor. I got guys like Justin Hill. Keelan Russell's another one. Alex Asparuhoff, the freshman punter. Obviously, he's got a shot to be Alabama's starter, but he missed the spring. We'll have to wait and see. So I kind of have him as possible. Probably could have said confident, but it's just he's going to be in a battle. So we'll have to wait and see. But Ivan Taylor and Justin Hill and Keelan Russell, like they have guys ahead of them. I think they have the ability to be freshman impact players. They just have some players in front of them that are kind of holding them back. But it's possible they could work into a role, or it's possible that an injury kind of elevates them. And if they do, I think they're going to be pretty impactful. And then the 4 long shots that I have are Jackson Lloyd, Michael Carroll, Marshall Pritchett, and Caleb Edwards. And, so a couple of offensive linemen more than likely going to take injuries, but you never want to count those highly rated offensive linemen out. If Wilkenformy, for whatever reason, does end up struggling and they have to try to find somebody, totally can see one of the freshmen stepping up and taking that job. Tight end is one where it's like, they don't feel too great about it, mostly due to injury, but it's like one of the 2 true freshmen there. I could see it being a possibility where if they're not getting out of that position what they need to, one of those freshmen could end up stepping up. So I would say they're the long shots, but that's a total of 10 different guys who could end up making an impact with a couple of guys that I'm pretty confident in. So hope that answers the question well enough, Eli.
Great job, Clint, and thank you guys as well. Get in the comments section. Make sure that you subscribe to Cover Crimson. We're going to be covering Alabama, whether it's shows like this or anytime there's breaking news, we'll jump on here live and talk to you guys as well, leading up to our coverage on game days and everything else. So Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com. We appreciate you guys. Also, the podcast, Cover Crimson Podcast Network, brought to you by Pearl River Resort in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, it's the Augusta that you can play. You don't have to have a membership. The Azaleas, the Oaks, 2 amazing golf courses right there. As part of Dancing Rabbit, go stay at the clubhouse. You get a golf cart. You can ride over to Silver Star, park there, take the skywalk over to Golden Moon, eat at Philip M. Steakhouse, Mom and Them's Restaurant, all the great bars, musical acts, and then the sports book, Timeout Sports Lounge. They got you covered, whether it's Geyser Falls Water Park or the spa, Pearl River Resort. We appreciate them, but and tell me how your experience goes. I want to know, because I bet you that you're going to go over there and have a good time. All right, roll tide, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.
To Pearl River Resort.